Welcome to Uncivil Law. For today's story, we are talking about coworker nightmares. You have coworkers that you don't get along with, but has your coworker bitten you, punched you, and choked you, then tried to assault you in your sleep? Well, if so, perhaps you are working at Yosemite National Park, where this story has come to its final culmination. Let's go ahead and get started with this. A former employee at Yosemite National Park was sentenced on Friday for prurient-related assault on a sleeping coworker. Charles Porter, 32, is to spend the next 12 years and 4 months in federal prison for the related federal offenses. The federal prosecutor said wanted a sentence of 17. The defense wanted a sentence of 10. So I guess we wound up somewhere in the middle. Authorities say that witness intervened after Porter had bit, punched, and choked the sleeping man in that man's employee cabin, according to the sentencing memorandum. The defendant worked for Aramark Management Services, who provides concessions to Yosemite. So their concession provider was staying in the employee provided housing at Yosemite National Park. And this guy decided, well, he is the concessions provider. I want a bite to eat. Let me go get it from him. Very much from him, I guess. According to evidence presented at the trial on April the 14th of 2020, in Yosemite National Park, Porter, an Aramark employee working and residing in Yosemite Valley, entered the victim's cabin in the employee housing at night while the victim was asleep and began to pruriently assault him, biting and punching him during the attack. He has a strange style in his nighttime activities, I guess. The victim fought back, and during the struggle, Porter attempted to complete his prurient act through penetration. The victim was able to reach the door of his one-room cabin to call for help. Nearby neighbors actually heard the call for help and responded and physically removed Porter. Authorities say the victim, a man identified as TD, lives with physical and psychological challenges because of the incident. I would think so. The assault was so severe that TD felt he was going to die. Understandable. From documents, Porter, on the other hand, has not accepted responsibility or shown remorse for his actions. Rather, at trial, he testified that TD, the victim, was actually trying to pruriently assault him, alleging that TD attempted to pull down his pants. While Porter testified to his version of a detailed account of what happened in TD's cabin, details regarding his interactions with witnesses, who directly contradicted the version of events, were in contrast hazy. The testimony of independent witnesses, TD's neighbors, who intervened and stopped the assault when TD yelled for help, directly corroborated TD's versions of events and contradicting Porter's versions of events. Yeah, so the whole thing of, it wasn't me, it was the guy that I was assaulting. He was really the one assaulting me. He was the aggressor, Your Honor. But the eyewitnesses, though, who heard the screams and saw you doing the assaulting things, and yeah. The defense attorney had maintained that Porter, who had no criminal history before this, experienced a tough life suffering prurient physical and substance abuse, which, okay. From the sentencing memorandum put forward by the defense, Mr. Porter's involvement in this offense was soaked in alcohol, drugs, and a generally permissive lifestyle that caused him to lose appropriate boundaries. Well, for the next 12 years and 4 months, someone else will be setting those boundaries for him, since he has such problems with it. Unfortunately for Mr. Porter, it was the intervention of law enforcement that's helped him to see much more clearly the negative effects that excessive alcohol and drug consumption can have, both on a person's health and well-being. Also with, the biting, choking, punching, and attempting to physically assault people. Mr. Porter is not attempting to minimize his act, but simply requests the court understand and consider the totality of the circumstances. He wrote that his client's blood alcohol level was 0.29. Wow. I mean, going for broke there. 0.29. Damn. Been drinking a little bit? Shit. Porter would not have done this if he was not so intoxicated. It's amazing he was able to do it being that intoxicated. 0.29 is a lot. It should be noted that Mr. Porter has no prior criminal history, and this incident should be viewed as aberrant and done under mental defect of severe alcohol intoxication. Yeah, but he voluntarily consumed the alcohol, though. So that kind of, yeah. Prosecutors worked to counter that by bringing testimony from AH. Indeed, AH testified to the similarity of assaults she had sustained at the hand of defendants years before he began his self-drinking in 2019. So AH has had some prior interactions with the defendant, the prior victim of assault of him, and now has manifested in, this. The charges provided were aggravated attempted prurient abuse, abusive prurient conduct, assault with intent to commit aggravated prurient abuse, assault with intent to commit prurient conduct, and assault by striking or wounding. The National Park Service has voiced concern there could be more victims. The defendant's whereabouts in recent years include Southern California at California Polytechnic University, the Yosemite National Park area, and the Pacific Crest Trail. So there might yet be undiscovered victims out there because, again, this isn't the first time he's done this. He assaulted this particular victim before, so probably also might be involved in some other stuff. So this may not necessarily be the end, but let's wrap this up. Thus, that brings us to the end of the case of Charles Porter, who bit, punched, and choked his coworker, not for the first time. So in last resort, I suppose, he decided to attack the person who is the supplier. But he's going to prison for the next 12 years and 4 months as federal authorities look for additional potential victims of Mr. Porter. That brings us to the end of discussion of this story.